me.
Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast.
The podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
And now, your host, Dustin Jones.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast. Thank you for your time today. Today's guest is a very special person for many reasons, but the big reason for me is this man creates the only podcast that is automatically downloaded to my phone. And I've got some precious space on my old smartphone, but he every day is reserved for that 15 to 20 minute nugget of inspiration and wisdom and honestly a challenge to me as a person, but then as a clinician as well. But that person is Dr. Jeff Moore. He is the Tony Robbins of physical therapy, and as far as I'm concerned, the best beard in rehab. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great, man. Wonderful comparison right off the bat. Thrilled to be here.
Some would take offense to that. So you can take it or leave it if you're a Tony Robbins fan or not. But you kind of have that effect on me every time I listen to your podcast.
No, man. No, first of all, taking offense is not something I'm greatly in the habit of. And number two, it seems like Tony's a pretty good dude. So that's fine with me.
Oh man. So I want to, just let the audience that listens to this show just really hear your story, hear what you're about, and hopefully we'll go over to PT on Ice and listen to your podcast. Like I said before, man, I mean, it's been honestly a privilege to be able to listen to you, just how you process things, how you think, and your perspective on a lot of issues that we have in our profession. So I guess just to start things off, what's the quick and dirty of your career up to this point, now that you're in the beautiful state of Colorado?
Yeah, man. And the Colorado thing is pretty recent, although I've been here a few times in my life. But the quick and dirty, and I'll keep it at just that. I graduated in 2008 from St. Augustine, worked for a couple of years in outpatient orthopedics up in Bozeman, Montana. Phenomenal clinic up there, Dustin. It's Excel Physical Therapy. The owner is David Coletta, and we grew a lot when I was there, and they've grown a lot since I've been there. I'm not sure how many full-time clinicians they're up to now, and now getting into multiple locations, but just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. And it was neat because David was NIOMP trained, and so it gave me a different perspective. I had been Stanley Paris trained out of St. Augustine, got my MTC when I came out, and then working with David gave me a different look at things. And that even went further when we hired Amy Pakula, who was a Kaiser graduate. So she had went through the Kaiser program. And so now we had Kaiser and NIOMP and Paris in sort of this really, but Dustin, we had those in the absence of egos. So the three of us were throwing things around and challenging each other, but it was really more presenting ideas to each other, more so than challenging. So if somebody was stuck or what have you, it'd be like, hey, have you seen this? Have you looked at it this way? And that really, I think, is what spurred me to get even more into the clinical reasoning model and join up with Evidence in Motion and went through their fellowship that I timed with a move back to Michigan. So we spent three and a half years in Montana. I guess a full 3.5 years, and then wanted to dive deeper into clinical reasoning and also wanted to get around a bit more family. So Dustin, my wife and I had our kids both when I was in graduate school. So while I was going through St. Augustine, So while I was going through St. Augustine, we had our first one in my second semester and my second one in my sixth semester. So we had both of our kids. They were real young when we moved to Montana. We didn't know anybody out there, man. We just moved out there because there was a good job opportunity, and my wife and I liked the mountains, and we had a couple reasons. So we moved out there and kind of realized after a few years, boy, it'd be nice to be around some more family. So moved back to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where I'm from. And my brother had started a clinic out there. So he and I really grew that over the next five years, or maybe a little bit more than that. Just wonderful time in private practice. Wound up with a good handful of clinicians there at the clinic. And while I was doing that, that's when I went through Evidence in Motion's fellowship, which just completely and utterly revolutionized the way that that I look at PT, more so the way that I think about PT and the way that I think about patient management. So that was a really great experience. Sort of during the end of that, I started the Institute of Clinical Excellence, which is the teaching company that I run with a bunch of my good buddies. And that sort of took on a life of its own, and then finished up the fellowship, wound up teaching for Evidence in Motion quite a bit. And then the final big change was my wife kind of saying, it's been a long time now, I really want to get back out to where I was from. She grew up in Loveland, Colorado. And
Nice.
always wanted to get back out here. But, pay is not awesome in Colorado just because the desire to live here is so high. A lot of PTs are very active, motivated people, and Colorado is an excellent place to be if you're an active, motivated person. So the competition for jobs is quite high. But what wound up happening, Dustin, was the teaching company grew so much more than I expected that it kind of got to a point where I was like, hon, I can just work part-time out there in the clinic and then do my teaching company in Denver International is a great airport. And so I teach about between 40 and 44 weekends a year, Dustin. So having a good airport is key because when you rock that many weekends, man, when I was in Michigan, I was driving to this small airport in Green Bay and then connecting into Chicago if it was available and getting delayed. It was a real mess. And now I catch the shuttle right down to DIA. I hop on and I'm direct flight to pretty much anywhere. So I hope that wasn't too long. That brings me to date, man. I'm in Colorado, going to be working part-time in Tim Flynn's clinic starting in January and doing my 44 weekends a year, doing a lot of one-on-one mentorship beyond that, teaching for South College now quite a bit. And man, just really living the dream. I mean, trying to get an idea of what this PT thing's all about and how maybe I can bump it forward a little.
I love it. So there's many ways that we could take this. I'm going to ask a personal question first.
Great.
You don't have to answer it. I'm thinking about this from, I'm still in the honeymoon phase. I'm about 3.5 years into being married. And I talked to you a little bit ago about, potentially getting a home. I'm curious, when you had your kids, and you're growing this family, how did that change your perspective about your profession, or did it?
Well, it does two things, man. It makes you use your time wisely and it makes you care more. And those are two really big things when you look at what we do. I mean, the first one is the flex time was gone, right? There was no more time to have portions during your day that weren't utilized properly. And I think that in a lot of ways, that actually makes you more productive, not less. People are always asking me, Jeff, should I go through fellowship when I have kids? And it's like, well, your attention to time gets razor sharp. And in a lot of ways, man, you and I both know back in the undergraduate days, you procrastinate your work and you sit around and drink beer and eat pizza. And pretty soon you don't know the stuff for the exam,
Right.
and even though you had plenty of time, it was one too many games of Tecmo Bowl, and
You
so,
just dated yourself there, big guy.
oh man, that's true. That's right. But so I mean, it makes you pay so much more attention to your time. And then number two, it makes you care more, man. Like you have kids that are growing up and you see what's happening with opioids and you see what's happening with invasive procedures that people don't need. And you look at your kids and you think, what if someone talked them into something like that, man? Like what it gives you a deeper sense of, I've got to be a part of this change. And so I think, man, those two things really were probably it. And then, dude, if you want to be totally honest, it makes you hustle harder because I want my kids to be okay. I came out, my wife wasn't working. She really wanted to be home with the kids, which I think was a huge blessing. Mm-hmm. But when you have two kids, man, you're going through graduate school. I was bartending at night to pay, part of my tuition. So I would do school all day and then I would bike over. I didn't have a car. So I'd bike over and I would bartend in the evenings to try to help chip away at that tuition a little bit. But, it gives you, I think, a certain sense of hustle out of good old-fashioned desperation, good old Maslow style. And so I think those things, man, a little bit of extra hustle, a little bit of sharpening up of your time, and just a little bit more give a damn, I think, about how things go forward is overall a pretty solid combination to improving your proficiency and career trajectory.
Yeah. I don't have children, but I've experienced kind of the opposite of that in the sense of, working. Wife just got through with her medical training and the constraints or the demands of our time have kind of decreased. And it's amazing how even, I'm working, as a home health clinician, I'm doing this podcasting stuff on the side. Even then, I still have the ability to slack off and to not be driven, not to maximize my time. And so, yeah, I view, because I've seen a lot of fathers that, man, they just get after it, like, especially, after they have their kids, because they have those positive constraints and their motivations change. So I appreciate you answering that. I know that was, a personal question, but I think about that stuff a lot, especially with pretty profound people like yourself. So, but I want to go back to that first, or not that clinic in Montana. So humility seemed to be a constant thread there. People were teachable. You all wanted to learn. Is that something that you feel like can be developed in the clinic, or was that just completely random that you all ended up in the same place and were actually able to learn and grow in that healthy way?
I don't think that can be developed in the clinic, but I also don't think it was random, right? I think it comes down to how you hire people, right? I think it comes down to having a real acute sense of the people you surround yourself with. I mean, David and I, the owner of the clinic, we spent a lot of time together before I signed on. We took a long hike in Yellowstone National Park and just spent time out in the woods, man, just talking about who I was and who he was and what were our values. What were we willing? What were we willing to put in front of ourselves, man? And that's what inspired me about David. The more we talked, the more I realized this guy seems to put a lot of stuff in front of himself. His wife, his family, his church, he has a lot of things where he says, this comes before me. And when people have that sort of a mindset, this idea that the mission is bigger than I am, you find those people, man. You gravitate towards those people. You work for those people and you hire those people behind you. And so I don't think you can develop it, which is why you have to develop that real acute sense of being able to recognize it. Because if you can't develop it, you better be able to recognize it, because you want to be able to get those people around you straight away. And so it wasn't random. It was intentional. But it certainly was a blessing, because I think that's what created an environment where you really step forward.
That's a good point. I like that interview process. Tell him he can interview me anytime if he takes me out to Yellowstone.
Yeah, man. I mean, doesn't it blow your mind, man?
Yeah.
How artificial some of the interviews are that people do nowadays. I mean, one quick 45-minute session in the clinic, it's not personal. You're not, I mean, don't you find that to be crazy?
It is crazy, especially in my world in home health, because I mean, especially after listening to you and your perspective on building a team and just bringing solid people around you. I've interviewed or been familiar with several companies, and we'll just stick to the home health region, where you'll come in, do the interview, but honestly, it seems like the prereqs for the job are that you have an MPI number and you can bill Medicare. And honestly, and you can fill out an OASIS starter care to some degree of efficiency. And I just wonder, the turnover is crazy. A lot of places, the morale is low. It's not a very growth mindset type company, other than, the bottom line for a lot of people. And it makes you, I mean, it's pretty obvious that, the outcomes that you get with that, but it's such the norm that it can be troubling, unfortunately. So
yeah, man. And I think that's a huge thing for your listeners to be thinking about, whether you're getting hired or being hired, man. That process should be so, because if you think about it, once you bring people on, or once you get in the group, right? Like you said, can you create that humility? No, you can't create that. That was created when they were 17, in 19, 24. I mean, we're way past that now. And so if that's true, and if we believe it's as important as it is, that being around people who have sort of this humble, other things first mindset, then all of the gravity of most of our decisions should be on that front end, right? So, I mean, when I think about how I hire people for the Institute and dude, it's a very personal process. I mean, when Mike and I were talking about doing population health stuff, the first thing I wanted to do was go to his house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I wanted. I wanted to go to Jersey and see his clinic and drink his coffee and watch him talk to his family. You want to be in that person's world. I mean, with Justin Dunhamley and we sat outside of a pub in downtown Phoenix with his wife and, told stories about how we got where we got and what bothers us and dude, I guess I want to advocate to everybody before you join a group or before someone comes into your group, do the front end of building the personal relationship. Because that's what makes the group rock solid following that, dude. It's the front end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of front end work with a lot of back end gains, honestly. But if you, it's the exact opposite out a lot of times in the real world where it's a super quick interview, not personal. And then you lose probably thousands of dollars and lots of man hours on having to train staff every few months.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is unfortunate. So let's I want to transition into your role as an educator and a podcaster. I view those kind of in the same bucket. I guess first off, did you foresee yourself in this position in terms of having a voice, being an educator? Back, let's say when you were, a year out of school, did you have this in mind, or this kind of just this how your path took you?
No, I mean, Dustin, I still don't have it in mind. I
love it.
I mean, honestly, man, what I love to do is treat people. I mean, I was from the moment I got out of school. I mean, I got out of school on a Friday, and I had my first full-time job started Monday in Montana. So we had a 40-hour trek across the country in the U-Haul with the little ones. And we had to get there, man, because 6:30 a.m. on Monday was coming quick. So we were hustling. I remember being in St. Louis thinking we can't sleep for that long. We got to get back in the car. I was still in my cap and gown, actually driving across the entire part of Florida. I didn't want to change. I said, we got to go. It was funny, man. This has nothing to do with your question. I'm really sorry. But we were walking across the stage, right? And they had this really fancy ceremony that you got to go to on top of, St. Augustine has this beautiful building where you go to school. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be modules. Now it's this gorgeous castle right in the intercoastal waterways. So when you're done, you finally get to go up to the Heritage Lounge and you have this beautiful reception, right? And so everyone walks across stage and then goes straight up the stairs, and you get to have cocktails with the faculty. It's a big deal. Dude, I walked across those steps, man. I bolted out to the parking lot. The U-Haul was already running in the parking lot. I got in cap and gown style and started driving across Florida. So I mean, it was a lot of hustle. But from the moment of Monday morning, I treated patients 40 to 50 hours a week, every single week for over 8 years, and only stopped now because we transitioned to Colorado. I'm waiting for my license. I'll be back in clinic in January. So the what's near and dear to my heart is trying to come alongside folks and bump them forward. I mean, that's what I love to do. And the other stuff is just coming from that, right? I mean, the podcast thing, if you want to call it that, I mean, it's really just me yelling at my phone for 15 minutes every morning while I drink my coffee. But I mean, that just came from, I was talking to a student one day and she was like, dude, you got to tell other people this stuff. And I was like, all right. I said, there's this Periscope app. So I fired it up and I started talking at it. And there were some people that were like, hey, dude, you should do that tomorrow. So I said, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Well, I did it a few times. Then people were like, well, could you keep doing it? I'm like, well, yeah, I can. And then someone was like, hey, dude, I mean, that was great, but I doubt you're going to be able to do that all week, because you're not going to come up with material. I said, dude, material's not a problem. I said, I have a lot of problems in my world, but that is not one of them. And so and so off it went. And then it just sort of developed into this community. And that's what, Dustin, that's what PT on Ice is all about, man. People always say like, well, Jeff, you built this sort of deal, that a lot of folks know about now. And I laugh about that because I don't think I built anything. I mean, I think I created a space where really motivated people like to meet. That's all I did, right? I mean, I got up and my enthusiasm was noticeable. So other people who gave a damn, who were like, I want to be a little better, thought, that guy seems to be, while a little bit insane, relatively excited about our profession. And so they gravitated towards it. And so really what PT on Ice is about the other people, not so much about the content. It's about the people that want to rally around something like that. And when you get a group developing like that, it becomes this amazing network of folks emailing and tweeting all day about, hey, Jeff said this, but what do you think about this? And it's the what do you think about this, man, that I love so much.
Right.
So the PT on Ice thing is simply truly an organic movement of me loving what I do and sharing a bit of that, and being fortunate enough that other people who are jacked up about it seem to gravitate towards it. Now we've got kind of this unstoppable community of highly motivated people. So the point is, man, it all sort of stemmed from that. And the same, I guess, would go for the evidence in motion and institute stuff. And that I was at courses being a TA, just trying to learn, and people grabbed me and said, would you mind coming back and teaching a course? And so it all sort of developed organically. It was never a vision. It was more that other folks felt maybe I belonged in that space and appreciated my content. And now, man, I just feel blessed to be able to hopefully do all of it.
Yeah. I'll tell you, from the outsider's perspective, it's been pretty just fascinating to watch, your content grow and the website and just kind of observe. Because I remember, I will never forget this, Jeff. I was in Columbus, Ohio, doing my favorite urban hiking route, which happens to go by Ryan Smith's current apartment in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. And I was listening to, it was a Therapy Insiders podcast with Gene Chirac Abroad, and you were on there talking about mentorship. I believe this was August of 2016 2015 is when I listened to that. And I was walking around listening to you, just the what do you think questions. I mean, and you were just ripping it, and your passion was very clear. You had very clear thinking and what you believed about mentorship and your perception of new grads and all those different topics. And I remember the first thought that came to my mind was like, man, this guy is intense. and then, I was like, I need to follow him. So I started following you on Twitter, and then, PT on Ice happened, and it's just been so cool because I'm not checking in, every morning. I was when I was in Columbus, but now I'm just doing the podcast. But I mean, yeah, for listeners that aren't familiar, you've got Jeff just getting, holding the phone, ask him, answering whatever questions or whatever comes to his mind. And you've got hundreds of people getting on the computer, interacting, asking questions. And it really is this community of people that it's very infectious. So if you become a part of that and regularly tune in, I guarantee you are going to be changed as a result, and changed in a good way. So with the podcasting though, or PT on Ice, what have been your biggest surprises, Jeff? What's been, I guess, shocking as you've put yourself out there and created this content pretty consistently?
Well, I mean, one of the things that shocks me is that people's feathers get ruffled pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's one thing I don't relate to very well. You talk about me being intense, and I get that quite a bit. People will write me and say, dude, that really fired me up. And it's funny, Dustin, that I don't look at myself that way at all. Like, I guess I don't picture myself as like trying to fire you up. Like, that's certainly not the intent of what I'm doing. I'm just talking about what I really enjoy and care about, and think that if we do a little better at it, it might help people's lives a bit. It's more, I think, just a pure enthusiasm for what I do, more so that I'm sure as heck not trying to make. I've always said, man, I don't want to help to motivate people. I want to work with motivated people. Like, I don't even like the idea of that. Like, I don't like the idea of like, this person's not motivated, so I'm going to dump a lot of my energy into them and see if I can rally them up a little bit. Nothing about that sounds even remotely appealing to me. I want to create a space where people sense my enthusiasm and motivation, and because they share that, they want to come gather. Right. And so I think that's always been the way it's developed. And I think the reason that maybe the intensity that you speak of, it comes out that way, is because I don't have a whole lot of barriers to my passion. I think as people have continued to tell me that, I've self-reflected and wondered, what are they saying? Like, why does it come out like that? And I think a big part of maybe my approach that might make it a little bit different is I don't have a lot of barriers to letting that passion out. Like, I don't take a lot of offense at things people say to me. I don't make a lot of things personal. And so there's not a whole lot of checks and balances to my emotion coming out of my body, And so I think maybe that's part of what people perceive as intense. But the opposite of that, I think, because I am built that way for whatever reason, I'm always surprised that other people have so many checks and balances to their thought process. Like so much of it is people take offense really easily, or people are really tied to certain camps and have a hard. There's a lot of emotional stops, I think, for people. And I know this because I get a lot of emails after every episode. Right? I'll get a handful of emails of like, you can't say. Well, yeah, I can say it. I just said it. Clearly, I can say it. We're beyond that part of the conversation. I mean, now we're more in a time of saying, you know, how do we feel about it? And so I think people are really stopping themselves from finding their truest self. And I think that if I could recommend anything, or if I could tell you what surprises me, it's how many things that aren't important that stop people from thinking clearly. That's what has surprised me. The things people will write and say that are barriers to them either receiving what I'm saying or doing something that they care about. And I'm surprised how trivial those things are, and how oftentimes emotional and a bit finicky those things are. And so that's what surprised me the most, man. I'll put stuff out that was pretty raw and pretty truthful, and it's never hateful, right? I mean, it's always optimistic, or it's always at least hoping to move things forward, and people will take significant offense. And I guess that's been one of the bigger surprises for me, man.
Yeah. And I don't, do you take that as a view of if you portrayed your topic well? Is that one of your measures of, okay, it ruffled some feathers, I probably said some things worth saying?
Dude, that's a great question. So we talk about that every now. So dude, I'm a huge believer in the 20% is the sweet spot of discontent. So I put a lot of time into that one, man. And I think in any given scenario, if you're the leader, there should be at all times 20% disconnect. So my dad is gone now, but he had a relationship with a company that he knew of. I always love this story. So they had a shopping cart, an empty shopping cart, and they would leave that shopping cart parked right outside the office in the hallway every day. Mm-hmm. And on the first of the month, the owner would take that shopping cart and roll up to the lowest performer's desk and put all their stuff in it. And that was it for that person, man. And the point was, my dad asked the owner about it before he left the company. He said, dude, what is with the shopping cart? And the guy said, there should always be a bottom percentage that is underperforming and upset, and they should be upset with you. Right. And there should always be this bottom percent of discontent that you have to be managing and addressing actively. Now that's a bit of a harsh view, rocking the shopping cart. But the point was always taken. If you are sufficiently pushing your leaders, if you're sufficiently giving your top 20% what they need to do great, if you're developing a culture of excellence that rewards your top performers, that should bother your bottom performers. They should be irritated and frustrated. There should be an equal percent, even though you're trying to hire well, man. Let's face it. When a company grows a bit, there are people that aren't keeping up, right? There are people that aren't pulling their weight. There are people that are perpetuating thought viruses and drama. There's always going to be some of that. And so I've always believed if you're leading properly, if you're really speaking to the folks who are doing the work, who are in your top 20%, who are blazing the trail, if you're putting most of your energy towards them, which I think you should be, that's my way of leadership. Like I said, I don't want to help motivate it. I don't want to help to motivate people. I want to help motivated people. I think we need to focus more on our top 20% and less on our bottom 20%. And if you're leading them properly, you should be really irritating the hell out of the bottom 20%, right? Because you're always rewarding excellence. You're always, that should be very, very irritating. So the point, this all comes back around to your question of, if my message is talking to the people that are high performers, that are changing the game, if I'm facilitating them, I should be bothering somebody else. And you shouldn't bother. If you're bothering 50% of people, you're intentionally being inflammatory. And that's not the point. Because now you've inspired bickering, which is actually, if anything, paused forward progress. But you should certainly, if you're being honest and transparent and authentic, and you're talking to motivate the right people, you should be bothering a certain percentage of folks who can't handle that dialogue. And if you're not, then you're not doing your job. I believe that percentage is 20%. To answer your question, yes, I do take that as a symbol of good, man. That hit a sweet spot. Now, if I get like 25 emails, dude, it might have been too heavy. You gotta check yourself a little bit.
I love it. I kind of view you Mike Eisenhart and Jerry Durham y'all are kind of in the same group to me in terms of people that their passion is infectious. They're very clear in what they believe, and they share it, on the internet, in their circles, and the APTA realm. I mean, just all over our profession. And it's just really, really cool for me to observe you all in your work, and just to see the momentum that you all generate, and the change that you bring as well. And it makes me excited for the future, for sure, of the profession. But it's just cool to see, just to see how you all operate and how you communicate. So keep doing what you're doing, man. I love it. I know a lot of people are definitely, they got your back. And, I hope all the listeners to this podcast will definitely check out, your podcast, PT on Ice. I'll put a link to that in the show notes to make it easy for everyone to do so.
I appreciate that, man. Those are heavy hitters that you just put me in contact with there. And that's sort of where the company is going, right, man? So like when I look at what I'm doing with Ice in this attempt to create PT version 2.0, the idea is to find those people that you're talking about, the people who have got a sense of what's real and of how we need to go forward, and aren't afraid to put that out there. And more importantly than not being afraid, can actually put it out there in a way that is, as you said, contagious and infectious. This is the idea. So like when I look at what Mike and I are doing with population health, trying to use his leadership to move things in that direction. When I look at what we're doing with Jerry Durham with the patient experience, trying to use that same personality, that same idea to bump us out of cruise control, right? To bump us into thinking, hey, we have to incorporate, because anytime, man, that you want to have the profession pivot and shift and turn, you have to have a leader in that spot that can create something that generates that bump from cruise control. Because people like cruise control, man. That's a reality.
We're getting incentivized for it at the moment.
Yeah, dude, exactly. And so like same with what I'm doing, you mentioned Ryan Smith a moment ago, what Ryan and Mitch, what they're doing through ICE to run that clinical, clinical management of the fitness athlete and getting us in those CrossFit boxes. And, we have to be willing to find leaders that can bump us out of cruise control in all of these different areas that I really believe are going to serve as the bedrock of physical therapist version 2.0. So I really appreciate that you find that in some of those folks that you mentioned.
Yeah. And another common thread too is that like these people, they're not necessarily putting themselves out, in the public sphere in terms of, in our little social media rehab circle, but you're putting ideas out. It's not about building up your ego, but actually building, population health. Or for Jerry, it's the patient experience and focusing on the patient. Or Ryan and Mitch is, how can we, get out of the traditional clinical model and get in these different places like fitness facilities. So that's what I really, really appreciate. It's like a servant mindset that's pushing our profession forward, pushing, innovative ideas. It's going to have, huge impact on PT.
Dustin, that's it. You nailed it, man. And that is the one thing that I would say has been consistent across my life, personally and professionally. And it started with David Coletta, right? When I got out of school Monday morning, we already talked about David, but it's went through every single person. And it goes to the faculty at South College. It goes to the leadership at Evidence in Motion. It goes to my company. It ain't about you. Right. And it's about finding people that care more about the mission, that put things in front of them. It ain't about them. It ain't about them. It's about the fact that there's a need and they feel they have an opportunity maybe to contribute towards advancing us in that direction, but it's not about them. Mike doesn't think it's about him. Mike does not think it's about him.
Right.
Mike damn near to a fault doesn't think it's about him. It's about change, man. And if you can find people that believe it's about other things and not themselves, and those people happen to also be talented and hardworking, that's when a forest fire starts, man.
Boom. Love it. Yeah. I love it. All right. So, we could talk about this stuff all day, but I'm going to transition the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to some direct questions. First two are going to be mine, and then we'll have some listener questions after that.
Cool.
So I'm curious, let's say, when you moved to Colorado, you decide to do home health. You're going to work for a home health company. If you were hired on as a staff physical therapist, tell us what your first few months, let's say first year, would look like with the goal of being an absolute all-star home health PT. What would you make sure you would do or not do?
What was my timeline there, Dustin? Did you give me a month?
Let's give a year.
Okay, that's a whole different ballgame. Okay,
Yep.
so if you gave me a year, because I was going to say a month would have been too short, because the first thing that I would have to do is humble up and figure it out.
Right.
So anytime you're used to leading, it can be a really easy mistake to try to lead in every new venture you go into because it's your habit. But the first thing you need to do is get the lay of the land. Right, put your leadership aside and figure out what's going on. Become competent, understand the scenario, recognize the biggest problems. Because if you go in trying to lead right away, there's no way that you're going to nail the biggest problems because you haven't done your due diligence. So the first thing I would do is dive in and work a lot and try to get into multiple settings and talk to a lot of people, right? And figure out where is the need here. So obviously there's a baseline need to do the job. Right. But where is the bigger need in this community for home health? And obviously the first thing I'm going to do, because it's the nature of my personality, is once I figure that need, how can I bring attention to it? So how can I make the community aware of where we're struggling to really provide the best quality care in the home health environment as not only PTs, but as multidisciplinary professionals? And I'd put a spotlight on it. Right. And so whether it would be writing blogs for Windsor's newspaper or whatever it would be doing to get something going where I'm writing, very regularly and bringing attention to it to motivate people to inspire change, always looking to how can I bump somebody off cruise control towards a greater purpose that I've now recognized. So first I would dive in, I would learn some needs, where are we struggling to service these people? And then immediately switch gears to now, how can I put a spotlight on that, gather resources and form a plan to fix it?
I like it. So you're saying you just wouldn't try and do 40 visits a week and just make as much money as possible? Is that what you're telling me?
Man,
that was sarcastic.
No, it's great. But and don't get me wrong, I'd be trying to make as much money as possible. I mean, I'm very, very comfortable with that. But when I was driving house to house, I think of how I would probably pull this off. And when I was driving house to house, I would probably start doing anonymous documentaries and things that I could, record and maybe make an ongoing profile of common themes that people could track and listen to, of challenges that you meet. So I would think of how can I incorporate media and awareness into my existing job while trying to make as much money as possible.
Boom. All right. What car do you drive, Jeff?
I drive an old Toyota Tundra. It's got about 185,000 miles on it.
Boom.
It's paid off, and it's been good to me, and I'm taking that baby to the grave.
I hear that. All right. So let's say this is your vehicle for home health, the old faithful Tundra. What would be in the back of your cab or even in the bed of your truck in terms of for your work as a home health PT?
Okay, well, the back of the cab right now will be tough because it's full of snow. It's full of snow, man.
Okay.
I think I'd have a lot of equipment that would start building up because I'd wind up going to people's houses and learning how to challenge people physically. I could see myself rocking some progressive stairs back there, so I could challenge people at different elevations. A lot of different. I bumped into some really cool resistance equipment that fits in really well to a small space. A lot of those Pilates rings and different things that you can use to challenge people. Because the last thing I'm going to do, man, is roll in there and just try to use what they have. It's going to bother me. So I'm going to have my own arsenal of things where I'm like, hey, Doris, hold on a second. I'm going out to the truck. I can see me developing a lot of those moments where it's like, Doris, I've got just the thing. And I can imagine that the bed of that truck would start looking pretty hilarious after about 6 months.
It'd be like Santa's sled, always pulling something different out.
Exactly.
I can see that.
Exactly. Doris, we have not hit a plateau. Give me 1 second,
Oh, boy. All right. So Mark Cholik asks, now we're getting to your bread and butter.
What's up,
Thoughts
Mark?
on...
Dude, I can't say hi to Mark. Anyways, Mark, if you listen, how you doing, man? I'm so used to on Periscope when people chime in, I can say hi. But anyhow, hi, Mark. Good to hear from you, boss.
I love it. He asks, thoughts on manual interventions for older adults. What do most folks need to do more of, and what should we back off on?
So Jason Rodriguero said it best this weekend down at South College when he was teaching. He said, we tend to use manual therapy the least in the patients that need it the most. Right. A lot of older adults haven't experienced a lot of manual contact. Just that human need is one reason to pull it out. Right. But beyond that, a lot of older adults, when I see them in the outpatient clinic, and Dustin, correct me if I'm wrong, if this isn't the way you're seeing it in the home health setting, but when I see them in the outpatient clinic, a lot of their characteristics are dominated by stiffness patterns. right? So, I mean, good old fashioned legitimate stiffness that responds beautifully to man. I mean, a lot of times you have this, you look at those stenotic patients. I mean, dude, line those up because I mean, those are the ones they're a lot of times they're non-acute, non-irritable. You can really go to end range and really mobilize these people to freedom. It help loosen things up and then do your neuromuscular re-education following that. But I mean, man, I'd be busting that out and really trying to be probably what other people might perceive as more aggressive. To me, what I think is appropriately aggressive in incorporating manual therapy techniques that match their irritability in a stiffness dominant patient. So I think, Mark, I'd be doing probably a lot more of it than what you see to really facilitate movement. And also for those who haven't been moving a lot, remember, man, Mark, great manual therapy is a wonderful form of graded exposure. I mean, if these people have gotten fearful of movement and fearful of different parts of their body, getting your hands on those areas and making it feel therapeutic to them can be extraordinarily encouraging to get them moving, get them more optimistic about themselves. So incorporating manual therapy from a graded exposure standpoint in some patients and incorporating it to really address stiffness dominant presentations in others, I'd see myself pulling it out, I think probably more so than most.
Yeah, beautiful. Joe Daniels, he's a student, asked a similar question, but he also asked another question. I can't remember what year he is in school, but he's about to start an orthopedic rotation.
Ooh.
So he said, best advice you have for a student going in an ortho rotation as far as how to approach the elderly population. So I think you kind of hit on that with the manual interventions, but would you have anything else to say to that question?
Dude, push him, man. Dustin, you know this, right? Dustin, you're all about this, man. I can't say I've been swinging KBs with Edna. I see some of those pictures you guys post. That's fantastic. But dude, people want to be pushed. When people are striving for something, that's when we thrive. Right? I think a big part of aging, if you want to talk about sort of a decline associated with it, is people stop thriving and striving. But why are they doing that? No one's pushing them anymore. No one's pushing. No one's saying, hey, you can do. Hey, pick that back up, Doris. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. When's the last time we said that to a guy? Gerald, I know you got two more, boss. We don't speak to 75-year-olds like that. Maybe we should. And so that's my big thing, man, is stop letting age determine our goals. And start letting the individual and your level of motivation, your skill to deliver what you have towards them determine the goals. And let's set those damn things pretty high, because it's a different world, man. So, I mean, Dustin, I know you got gold on that, but that's my first thought is let's go big or go home.
You say it much better, Jeff. I will give you that. But one thing, like when I read that question and with your previous response to Mark's question, I mean, the big thing that I think about is that grade exposure, because the fear of falling, the fear of hurting yourself it's a big and a very common issue, with older adults. And if we can give them some confidence in their physical ability, because their confidence has been degraded for years and years, and doctor visit after doctor visit telling them about what's wrong with them. You have this disease, you need this medication. And I feel like we have an amazing opportunity to be like, hey, you're doing pretty good for your age. Let's pick this 25-pound kettlebell up. Just like the difference in the mindset to talk about what's good, what's right with you, and how we can even improve upon that. It is absolutely huge, and we'll have some big results. So I know Joe Daniels is going to kill it in that rotation, and yeah, just get Doris lifting some heavy weights.
Dude, Dustin, what a great point. I think of all of it we could have said, I think you just nailed it in that. If we get upset that our patients who are 42 years old got one MRI and they're pretty hung up on it, and that's creating a barrier to us moving them forward and resolving their symptom presentation, right? Imagine the folks you're talking about who have seen 10 years straight of imaging and blood work and meds. I mean, dude, I can't imagine from your perspective how deep into the weeds these people are.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. I mean, it's a lot to overcome, just because their whole view of us, PTs, because we're in that whole medical model that they're used to, is that we're going to be the same ones to point out their deficits, to point out, the arthritic changes in their spine and their, different joints and all that stuff that they're used to. And it's very limiting from the PT perspective to be effective. But with patience, with encouragement, with developing trust, and just a lot of things that you talk about on PT on Ice and Jerry Durham talks about. I mean, you can definitely open up that door to get them to believe, in themselves again. I mean, it's not a quick process, but thank goodness, sometimes I can spend 3 hours a week for 2 months in someone's house,
Dude,
and after that, you can have a big impact. So
that's phenomenal. And like you said, you actually have the time to do it. And it requires it. Hey, dude, maybe this is a better conversation for offline, but I'm just going to go right into it here. You can edit it out if you want to.
No, all good.
Have you ever thought of doing in your community a community wellness series once a month, the thriving older adult? Because here's what I'm thinking, right? So we're all recognizing that we have self-imposed limitations on older adults regarding strength building, regarding a number of things that really aren't fair, and that the research actually shows they have capacity to develop in all these areas that we're limiting them on because of our perspective. Older adults are not tracking a lot of social media. Right. So they're not seeing these awesome, recent pictures on our Facebook streams, that show, 100-year-old, you're deadlifting 200 pounds. They're not seeing that material, right? They're not. Right. Have you ever thought of doing a once a month wellness thriving of the older adult where you get there and you tackle all this stuff? So you address to the older adults that maybe these images aren't a life sentence of pain, and maybe they do still have a lot left in the tank, and maybe bring in older adults who are really active and have them demonstrate deadlifts and really show them, look, we know you're not seeing it on social media. Well, how about seeing it here? Have you ever considered doing that? Or what an idea for someone who's really going the direction you are, which is trying to raise the bar of that population, to say, hey, let me show you what you can do.
Yeah, to directly answer the question, yes, I have thought of that. But the person that has really motivated me to consider this as I get to know, my new city in Kentucky, is Christina Novak. She's in the Twitter sphere, but she has a business called Stave Off, and it's, kind of a fitness facility / PT clinic. She'll do, one-on-one, fitness training. She'll do small group fitness and do one-on-one physical therapy. But she is amazing at reaching that demographic and really looking at where are they, where are they online? If they are, they on Facebook, or are they on Pinterest, or, whatever avenue, but then actually getting out, going to health fairs, going to Chamber of Commerce, all these different places actually in the community, and getting in front of people and teaching them and talking to them and giving them a little bit of hope. And that, for her, that leads to business, but she's having a tangible impact in her community. And it's really cool to watch her because she just moved to a new city, doesn't know anybody, and her fiance are doing exactly what you just talked about and just getting after it. It's cool. Really cool to observe.
Because these older cats, they love to gather. You think about, coffee, and, they love getting together, and
Yes.
you know what I mean? So, I mean, if they had like a community where things like that were demonstrated and educated in a fun environment, I just wonder if they wouldn't look and say, well, look, guys, Bruce is doing it. Like, I mean, Bruce has that weight over his head. I haven't lifted something over my head in a long time, but he's a peer and he's up there rocking it. You wonder what that could inspire. Dude, it's good for Christina. It's incredible.
Yeah. She's been really impressive. There's a lot of opportunity in that realm because especially with older adults, I feel like we do kind of stick in the medical framework when we are, addressing the public, but, we can step out of that easily into other places, whether it's a shoe store, a CrossFit box, or a Curves fitness facility. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I think the big thing too is like these people, I mean, just from a business perspective, if someone, goes there, these people have the most disposable income out of any demographic, in our country. So, but if you look at the services being provided to them or targeted towards them, they're probably one of the lowest in terms of, people actually trying to serve them in that manner. So it's a big potential. So we'll see where that goes. But Christine is definitely leading the way for me.
Old folks, man, they got numbers and they got cash. Who would have thought,
I love it. All right. Well, let's transition. I want to be respectful of your time. Quick questions. You can have quick answers. Don't have to be by any means.
I've always struggled with that, Dustin, but I'll fire away, man.
All right. So 25 years old, where were you at that point of your life?
How sad. I'm counting back in my head right now. 25 years old, man. I was managing a bistro in Fort Collins, Colorado. So that was
beautiful.
Yeah, that was right before I went to PT school, right? So I was I was going to go to med school, and I was driving back from Portland. I was living out in Portland for a while, and I was heading to the University of Indiana. I was going to go to medical school that following semester, and my buddy called me. I was driving across Montana. It was where I actually wound up living later on, and he called me, and I was in Missoula. And he said, this is a while ago, man. So my cell phone didn't have great reception, so I had to pull over in Missoula and have this conversation. He said, "Jeff, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to med school." I said, "I'm kind of getting my bearings together." And he said, "No, it's not going to work for me." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm opening a restaurant. I really need your help." And I said, "Oh, dude," I said, "tough timing, man. I'm kind of, looking forward to a new chapter." And he said, Nah, you're not. He said, "You got to come down." And I said, "Well, Tyler, if you really need me, so I hung her right in Billings, and I had it down." So my poor mom, I got to call her. Here she thinks I'm heading home, and I call her. I'm like, "Hey, Mom, I was going to do that med school thing, but my good buddy opened a restaurant." and that was apparent. I just think of how traumatizing that must have been.
Oh my god!
I was always kind of a loose cannon, and now you finally think your son's getting his act together and really going forward, and you get this call. And so anyhow, man, just a wonderful couple years of my life. It's where I met my wife. I hired her as a waitress, and we got started dating. That's why I quit the job, and it was just a really awesome couple years, dude. I mean, this is a whole other podcast, but like Ryan Michael Smith well knows, what you learn behind that bar when someone comes in and you're busy, but they're coming in with a rough day, and you've got to turn that around for them and make them feel well serviced and cared about while you're accomplishing 25 other things and a cook that didn't show up, and you're managing all of that on the back end while trying to deliver that high level of customer service in the front end. You pull that off, seeing 20 patients a day and managing some support staff is not that big of a deal. Yeah. So that's where I was, man. I was running that restaurant. Right. And if anyone's from Colorado, it's Dominic's on Harmony and LeMay in Fort Collins. So if anybody ever winds up at Dominic's, make sure you say, "Hey, do you remember when Jeff Moore was here?" If it's an old timer, you're going to get a big laugh out of that.
I'll put a link to that place in the show notes. Yeah, I interviewed Ryan Smith. We had a beer in Columbus, and we talked a lot about bartending, because I actually took one of my patients there to see him in his element, and it was quite impressive. But so you're 25 years old.
I have to do it. Because someone asked me the other day, what was the best tweet you've ever seen on Twitter? That's a big question, isn't it?
That is.
It was a gut response, man. One time I was at the airport. I'm always at the airport, but I was at the airport, and my flight had gotten canceled delayed. So everything was closed, and I wanted to have another beer. And I emailed Michael Smith just out of my frustration, because I knew another bartender would understand. I said, "Dude, they shut this. Here's all these people, right? They canceled the flight. You got 25 people having a hard day, and they close up the pub." And so I emailed Ryan Michael Smith, and he writes back with a head shake and says, "There is no last call for quality customer service." And I thought, oh dude, it was so deep. Like, dude, there is no last call under any circumstances. Anyhow, all-time best.
He's
tweet.
Wise behind his years.
Yeah, he is wise behind his years. Yeah.
So, all right, 25 years old. You're working at this bar. You're drinking lots of New Belgium beer. If you could go back, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give?
So if I could go back right now, dude, I wouldn't give myself any advice besides let the dogs out, man. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, stop. I love it. Don't put limitations on what you can or want to do, right? Don't filter anything, right? Because all of the kickback that comes with things that you let out that are unfiltered is, number one, warranted, oftentimes from the 20% of discontent we talked about earlier. But number two, highly irrelevant. And so, I mean, I would just continue to inspire. It's not just what I tell myself. It's what I would tell anybody who is 25 years old that's about to take a big step forward. And that is, do it purely. Do it authentically. Take the kickback. Take the consequence of kickback for the benefit of authenticity all day. All day. Because, man, when you run authentic, people surround you that are built for you, that are built for your mission. If you're not authentic, you have no chance to develop a team that is near and dear and pure to your heart and your mission and your cause. Authenticity is the guiding light to great team development, which is the guiding light to mission accomplishment. And if you're not authentic, if you hold yourself back because you're afraid to offend this person, or you hold yourself back because you're afraid that you're going to think you're wrong in 5 years, dude, we're all wrong in 5 years, right? So say what you're thinking right now and do it in an honest, unabridged, unpolished, unfiltered fashion. Let a team rally behind that and figure it out while you go. Enough planning, more action. That's what I would say. But that's sort of what I did. So I guess I would say, keep it up, boss. You know.
Folks, that right there is a glimpse into PT on ice every morning. Jeff Moore just ripping it. So last question here. This is my favorite question. And you've hit on so many amazing things already, but let's say we're at CSM. You got every geriatric rehab clinician in the room. Yeah. You got their attention for about a minute. What would you tell them?
A couple things. You know, in this, I got to be careful. I don't want to be misunderstood here. I don't want this in any way to come off as though I'm assuming what your guys' issues are, right? Because that would be a really inappropriate step over boundaries. But the number one thing I would say or question, Dustin, is: are we unified? Do we know where we're going, and do we have a way to get there? I would ask for self-reflection out of the group, right? Because every population, whether it's a people or whether it's of service. So like in your example, a group of healthcare practitioners that are in a common arena, right? Do we know our primary problems? And are we getting organized? Number one, are we motivated around them? Do we agree? Do we agree of what our primary issues are? Do we have a way to rally around that? And are we currently in that process? And what I think, if you're honest, and again, I have no idea what your state of affairs is in your community, but a lot of times when you really ask those questions, the answers are no. We disagree on what the main issues are. We don't have great organization to facilitate change in that area, and we're not currently doing that. So I'm always looking for a gut check, man. Anytime I have a lot of people around who are supposedly going after the same goals, you got to have that moment of, guys, are we on the same page? And do we have a way to chip away at this stuff? That's what I would call out.
I love it. Folks, there you have it. Dr. Jeff Moore. If you didn't know him, now you know. PTOnIce.com. He's on Twitter at Jeff Moore DPT, right?
Yep.
Jeff Moore DPT. Links to all the things we talked about in the show notes and where you can just get a hold of Jeff, ask him questions. I know he loves feedback, but I mean, most importantly, check out PT on Ice. I mean, this was a glimpse of what it's like, every morning, that he's recording, and you're going to be changed as a result. I know I have for sure. So Jeff, just thank you for your time. You're really generous to people like me that are just curious and want to, just learn from you as much as possible. So you're super generous with your time, and it's appreciated by me. And I know many others as well. I
sincerely appreciate that, man, but I'm not letting you get off this podcast without me saying it, Dustin. I really want to say thanks to what you do. We had a chance to have you on EIM's podcast and highlight some of that. But man, you are in many, many ways spearheading again, you say what I've done for you. Let me say what you've done for me. I didn't look at the older adult that way until you started talking. I didn't look at the older adult that way until you started putting out your podcast. And all of a sudden it got me realizing I'm shortchanging a group of people that really needs me not to do that because everybody else already does that. And dude, your voice has absolutely spearheaded and motivated change in a population that needed it. And dude, what more can you want to say about your career? That you went into an area of significant need and you completely changed the paradigm of the way people think about it. Dustin, you have very much done that for me as well as many, many others. So from me to you, man, sincere thanks in your direction.
My goodness. Jeff, you're going to make me blush.
It's okay. No one can see us.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's wow. I mean, I wasn't expecting to hear that from your mouth, but I mean, it's been shocking for me, honestly. Just a complete roller coaster ride that I did not perceive, and I know you can say the same as well. But I'm excited to be in this profession with you and trying to push things forward. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
Love it, man. Right back at you.
Hit me. Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you should hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com to find more helpful content. You can also find out how you can join the team and be a part of the private Facebook group, the monthly mastermind meetup, and have a say in the content and direction of this podcast. Once again, that's seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate you, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.